Episode 73. Didn't I used to paint miniatures? A long time ago on a YouTube channel not so far away, I used to paint miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons. You know, the game I play every week and rarely talk about. Honestly, I haven't been that invested in doing a video about regular miniature painting because I've been so inspired by Gaslands to do much else. Now, over the weekend at the Shasta Gamer Festival, I spoke to a lot of people from all walks of nerddom, and I fought like hell with my inner anxiety, which was trying to argue away compliments I was being given. I not only had Gasland vehicles for sale at the booth, but a few of my older miniatures out as well, which I wasn't planning on doing. One of those amazing people was Brian Ledford of Hazardous Booty. Brian was another vendor at the con who both sculpts and 3D prints his own creations. I purchased 3 monsters: the Yeti, which is the focus of this episode, the Elder Warp Hunter, reminiscent of the horrific Grell of Underdark legend, and my favorite, the Unliving Void Witness. Cannot wait to paint this one, as I have Giger meets Beholder visions of how I want it to look. Hazardous Booty has both unique monsters inspired by the classics and reimagination of some familiar D&D foes. In addition to the miniatures, Brian also created some small-scale trophy wall versions of some of the most recognizable creatures in any monster manual. While I am very tempted to pick up some in the future, my artistic struggles with busts and statues are still present, and I'm shying away from those types of projects at the moment. I chose the Yeti to begin with, as it reminded me of a childhood terror from my first trip to Disneyland. Yep, I use the term childhood terror and Disneyland in the same sentence. As a kid in the 70s, Disneyland was my Xanadu, and an e-ticket was a passport to unlimited imagination. When I was maybe 7-ish years old, my family planned a trip to Disneyland, and I spent months in eager anticipation. During that time, my father was a district produce manager for a chain of grocery stores, and as a perk, he was offered tickets to Disneyland from, I think it was Dole, could have been Chiquita Bananas, as they were the exclusive banana and pineapple supplier for Disneyland. Yep, that kind of exclusivity shit goes way back. Those contracts were a badge of honor. Now, in the months leading up to our visit, I remember ads for a new edition of the Matterhorn ride, the Abominable Snowman. Somewhere along the ride, this monster was lurking, waiting. The ads featured the shadow of the beast, lit from behind for effect, of course, and I remember specifically the glowing eyes peering out at me from the darkness. Now, as I've mentioned before, I've not been truly scared by something entertaining in a very long time, and this was no exception. I was eager with the anticipation and enjoying the excitement from the terror of this unknown secret waiting for me. The time finally came, and Disneyland became my reality for 2 whole days. Yep, even back then there was a lot to see and lots of waiting. I enjoyed the classics: Peter Pan, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Alice in Wonderland, the Dumbo ride. See, my mother loved elephants, and Dumbo was her favorite. That's why I have such big ears. And of course, I got the nausea that comes from the teacup ride. When the time came for my confrontation with the wild legend of the North, my anticipation was trampled down by the fucking ridiculous line we waited in. Yeah, their ad campaign worked, and every person in the world was in line ahead of me. Ralphie from Christmas Story would have lost his shit at the sight of this line. Finally, it was our turn, and up we went. Every shadow, every cave, every alcove was thoroughly searched for my quarry. My own anticipation was ramping up the excitement. As our rapid descent down the mountain was at top speed, I think I might have seen the beast. I literally blinked and missed it. Son of a bitch. Ah well, lesson learned. Enjoy the build-up, but don't be too disappointed by reality. When I first saw the sculpt for the Yeti, I was immediately taken back to that time, and I knew what I wanted him to look like. I even had specific plans for the eyes. I wanted to go with a more grayscale look overall, so I used Army Painter's Black and Grays Triad to make the transition smoother. After applying a sprayed-on coat of matte black primer, I went to town adding thin layer after thin layer, switching from dark to light as I went. I'd forgotten how tedious this process can be, but there was enough distractions in the background to get me through it. Now, the weekend convention was an absolute blast. Within 5 minutes of opening, I had already sold my first piece, the Pizza Planet inspired rocket delivery. I will be making more like that as people seem to like the pop culture vehicles that I do. Saturday continued to be busy, but it seemed like everyone was being cautious with their money, and deservedly so under current circumstances. But the festival pass was for the whole weekend, so I figured people were waiting until the end to make their final purchases, and I wasn't wrong. At the end of the weekend, All Day Comics was a few cases lighter, heading back home, and pizza was on him. I too was heading home, 7 customs and 1 hauler lighter, not to mention the unopened extra Hot Wheels that brought smiles to many younger congoers, as well as the ones that inspired others to create their own wasteland beasts. After the progression from matte black to brigade gray was complete, I felt it was still too flat and wanted to add a blue hue to the fur. I've not done much with fur and wasn't confident with the results so far, so I added a light wash of thin blue tone, and the end result was pretty good. Of course, I overthink everything, and this was no exception. Instead of doing some light highlights to the fur and moving on to the base, I started to add some thin layers of bold titanium white to cut down some of the blue. I started with a little here, a little there, and by the time I was done, it looked at the end result, I had ruined it, well, in my opinion, and I chose to accept my losses and salvage the project. I finished adding the layers of white and then went back over the fur with a thin light tone wash. This gave the overall fur a muddy look, which doesn't look half bad. While I did not get the results I had envisioned, I focused on the base and adding some frozen tufts and ice sparkles to the textured base. The mini came with a basic base, which is perfect as it let me create the environment for the beast. Adding some true blood effects to the mouth and hands, as well as blood drippings on the snow, I rounded out the mini, finishing with the eyes. I used more bold titanium white and then hit them with a layer of lens flare glow. Despite the rest of the model, I'm very happy with the eyes. While it did not turn out the way I wanted it to, not only did I push myself to complete the project, and there was a time I would have walked away entirely, but also my family reassured me it was much better than I thought, and I love them for that. I plan to do the Unliving Void Witness next, as I have more experience with horrors like that than I do with fur-covered beasts, so stay tuned for that one. Thank you to Brian at Hazardous Booties for letting me film my paint on his sculpts. I look forward to doing more and sharing them in the future. Check out Brian's website at hazardousbooty.com, where you can speak to the artist directly. Not many sites can boast that. I hope you liked this episode. Despite my inner turmoil, it was fun to put it all together and bring it to you, albeit a little late this week. My next few projects are, of course, Gaslands related, but I will be doing more D&D content, which I plan to sell the results in my Etsy store. If you have a suggestion for a creature to be featured, drop it in the comments below. For a specific request or customs, reach out to me through my Etsy store. If you haven't found me on the social medias, check me out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, and Blue Sky Social for behind-the-scenes content like my Workbench Wednesdays. Now slap that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode and help my subscription drive thrive. I'm almost to 200 subscribers, and to break that barrier this year would be a huge win. And as you scroll through the previous 72 episodes looking for some inspiration, remember, they ain't going to paint themselves.